Hey guys, NFX here with another tutorial. Well, it's kind of a quick tips type of tutorial. Today, what I have for you are 6 tips on using FL Studio that I use these tips on the regular, and I want you to know about them, and maybe you'll find some use for one or more of them in your day-to-day operations, and hopefully it'll make you more productive and efficient with FL Studio. None of this involves any music making. It's all using FL Studio in some way. So hopefully you're not disappointed by that. I have been uploading a lot of my music lately, so I figured, maybe I should do something FL Studio related. And I thank you guys for watching. So, the first one on my list is using the project folders. In older versions of FL Studio, you could save your projects wherever you wanted, and you still can. But when you would save a project and then you would, let's say, consolidate a track or use some samples or record some audio, all those samples and audio and consolidations would go into some global folder somewhere and separate from where your project was saved. So at some point around FL20-ish, um, ImageLine decided to use projects as a meme, I guess, kind of, where when you save a file, it gets saved into a project folder, and then all the work you do, whether it's consolidating, recording audio, uh, dragging samples into your project, all that data would get saved in one location under one project folder. And that to me is very useful because it keeps all of your projects complete and yet separated from the other projects also. So let me show you how you would make sure that that's activated. What you want to do is go to Options and then Project General Settings. And within here, there's a drop down box here, uh, when to ask for the data folder. Okay. And what I have it set to is when saving unsaved projects only. There are a couple of different options here. Uh, I don't need to read them to you, but you can read what they say. But the reason why I like when saving unsaved projects only is because it will only ask you for that when you're ready to save. Otherwise, there's a setting in there where when you go to File, New, it'll ask you for a project file name right off the bat. And for me, I don't often know what I'm going to name my projects till after I've worked on them a bit and kind of get a feel for what they sound like or what direction I want to take them. So for me, I choose when saving unsaved projects only. And then what that'll do is when I go to save this project, it'll ask me about that. And I'll show you that in a second. But while we're here, you could set that and then also go to your File tab up here. And there's a backup section. And one of the options there is to save to the project data folder if there is one. So what that can do if you have it set is it can save all the backups, the auto backups, uh, to your project folder also, which I find also very useful. So check those 2 settings. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. And when I save it, you'll see it'll ask me to give it a name and a location. Now the location will be remembered between your projects. And then whatever name you put here, it will add a folder to that location. So my default location is D Dropbox Projects and then FL24. And then whatever name I put in here, it'll make a new folder under that location, and it will save my project there. So in this case, I'm going to leave it as Project 1 just for demonstration purposes. And if you already had some samples dropped on here, you would also want to make sure that you either move or copy those samples into your location. Or you could tell it not to, but I would recommend that you either move or copy them so you have a copy of them in the project folder. Okay, then I'm going to hit save on project_1. I'm going to hit save. And now it's been saved. If I go to my folder, let me browse to it. There's project 1. And if I go into it, there's my project FLP. There's my backup. And then as I use this, whether I consolidate, record audio, etc., everything gets dropped into this folder. Samples will create a sample folder inside of here, and then your samples will be in there, that sort of thing. So I find it very useful. As long as I have this up, I want to also explain to you my second tip, which is, if you look here, you can see it says Dropbox Projects FL24 and then Project 1. If I go back up a level, you can see my projects for FL24 are all in here. And that's because one of the ways that I utilize the project folder is I put my projects folder on a Dropbox, which is a cloud saving service. I use Dropbox. There are several other ones out there, but I've used Dropbox for years. I'm happy with it. The one that you should not use is OneDrive for FL Studio projects. There's some kind of weird incompatibility there, but Dropbox does not have that issue, and I use Dropbox. Now, why do I do that? Well, because by doing it this way, everything I do gets automatically saved into the cloud. In other words, it gets backed up into the cloud. So even though I just created this Project 1 folder, it's already been backed up for me. There's not a lot of data there, and it just backed it up right away. And it's good to go up in the cloud. Now, the way my folder structure works is I have my Dropbox, and I have a projects folder, and then I use an FL Studio version folder. So that's why mine says projects FL24. If I go back a level, you'll see I have an FL21, an FL20. You do see a couple of older FLs here. That's just because I had to go in there and grab some files that I needed. But generally, you may not need your older versions, so they won't exist on your local drive. This is on my local drive until you need to use them. And just to show you what I mean by that is, even though you could see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 FL folders here, if I go to my actual Dropbox and go to my projects folder, this is on the web, you'll see I have all these folders from FL6, FL7. There's a few of my FL8s, FL9, 10, 11, 12, 20, FL6, FL9.6, 9.9, 11.5. I have all these backed up. So even though I don't have FL6 here on my local drive, it is backed up in the cloud. And if I open that up, you could see here's a bunch of my FL6 projects in here. And I can go in here and you can see some have a few FLPs and others don't. But that's how I keep track of my projects. That's how I manage that. For the next tip, I want to talk about when you're adding VSTs or generators, or when you're adding samples. I find it most useful to always use this plus button right here on the playlist. Now, there's many ways of doing things. You could hit the plus here to add a pattern. You could hit the plus down here to add a new channel. You can obviously go to an empty mixer track and do what you got to do. But if you use this plus button, it kind of does all that for you in one shot. And just to demonstrate, I'm going to hit this with a left click, your normal click, and it's going to bring up my favorites of the my plugins and generators. So let's say I'm going to load, um, let's just load FL Keys for an example. You'll see it did several things for me. It created right here on the playlist track an instance of FL Keys, so I can double click it to bring it up. It created a pattern for me called FL Keys, and it put that pattern automatically on the playlist for me. Additionally, it routed my FL Keys down here to an empty mixer track, and it even called it FL Keys. So it's ready for me to go in all ways. You know, I didn't have to add it here, set that, color it, name it, drag it here, etc., etc. All that happened from one click. So let's say I do that again. I'm gonna load an FPC, for example. So the FPC is loaded. Now it's on a empty FPC, but that's okay. You could see it's in the channel. It's routed to mixer number 3, which was the next open one. It's here on my playlist, all ready to go. So I find that super helpful. Now you may use samples, right? So if you do use samples and you right click on this, what it does is it creates an insert for you, and it's called insert 4 because it's named it after the mixer channel. And so these are linked, right? So what that means is if I go to, let's just say I go here and I'm going to grab, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm going to grab a crash cymbal. This might be loud. Hang on to your ears. And I drag it and place it there. Actually, I could place it anywhere in this lane, and what you'll see is that it's routed it automatically to insert 4. And you can see here in the channel rack that it's there. If I grab any other sample and just drag it into that same lane, it also gets routed to 4. So I may decide this is going to be for my drums, or that maybe this is just for my cymbals, and I have various cymbals I want to put throughout my track. I can do that and have them auto routed into my quote cymbal mixer track. And that's using this plus button with either a right or left click. You get all that benefit for free. Now, obviously, if this was my cymbal track, I'd want to rename it. And that brings me to my next tip, which is to use shift click. So, because this is linked to the mixer, I can shift click here and call it, let's just say, cymbals. And it will rename it here and rename it here because they're linked. Same would apply here to the FPC. I'm just going to call it drums. And you could even color it, obviously, if you wanted to. And then it's linked, so it does that for you. The shift click works pretty much on almost anything. So, for example, I could shift click on something here in the channel rack. I could shift click on the pattern and rename the sample in that case. But if I go back to the patterns, I can rename the patterns also, rename and recolor with a simple shift click. Another thing I wanted to point out, just going back, is when you do use this plus symbol here, when you click on the pattern, what it'll do, let me just show you, what it'll do is when you select, like I'm going to select FL Keys here as my pattern, it will auto set me to FL Keys here and down here. So I'm all ready to go. If I click on FPC, what do you think it's going to do? That's right, it's going to go to the FPC. here in the channel, and it's going to go to the FPC routed to the mixer. So by clicking just on the pattern, it'll also move over to those things for you. Now, maybe that's not for everybody, but for me, I love it. It makes my workflow go a lot faster. Another thing I want to talk about is in your browser over here, there's a library tab. And in the library tab, you have various plugins or generators listed, like FPC, for example. There's a bunch of free stuff in here, and you guys should check it out and make sure you're getting it. Like, for example, here it says FPC free kits, right? And now I've already installed them. It says installed, but that's why when I bring up my FPC, I have all these presets here. I have a lot of kits just for the FPC. I don't know, my son had installed FL Studio, and he didn't have all the kits, and I couldn't figure out why he didn't have all the kits I had. And then I eventually figured out he had never gone in here and set them to download. So, like, for example, I could go into samples, right? There's a bunch in here I haven't even downloaded yet. Super drums. There's 8,000 one-shot acoustic and electronic drum samples. Like, who wouldn't find that useful? Here we go. WA production one-shot selection, 600 hand-picked one-shot samples that I haven't downloaded yet. So there's a lot of content here that I'm not taking advantage of. Here under loops, you could see there's even more. Now, some I've installed and some aren't. But let's say I want to install these Lollivox vocal loops, right? It says free. There's a little icon. It's kind of small, I know, but it's basically a little arrow pointing down at a disk drive or something. If you click that, it'll download it for you. So when I click it, you can see that the little download helper opens up, and then here it's showing me the status of downloading those loops. These are vocal loops, right? So it's downloading, it's extracting, it's giving me an update. If you click off that, it'll just hide itself, but it's working, doing its thing in the background. And then to find them, you'll go to your all, and then find in here your packs folder. Within packs, we'll go to loops, and then here in loops, you can see there's Lollivox vocal loops, and then there they are. And now I have all these loops. Let me just listen to one.
This is how I feel for.
There you go. So now I have all this extra content that I can use. So don't sleep on the library tab and the free things that are within each one of these, like, SAR presets and morphine presets and FPC stuff, Flex. There's a lot of Flex stuff in here too. Don't sleep on that. And my last tip for this video is going to be when you are working with your projects and you're making changes, rather than hitting going to File Save or hitting Control S, which essentially is the same as File Save, I recommend you save as a new version. And what that means is it will take your existing file name and it'll put a number on the end of it. And if there's already a number on the end of it, it will increment that number by 1. So for example, we're at project _1.flp, and I'm going to hit Control N, which is the shortcut for that. And now it says project 2. And if I hit Control N again, it says project 3, project 4, etc. Now obviously you wouldn't just save it like that, but you would make some changes to your project, and then when you go to save it, you hit Control N, or you go to File, Save as New Version right here. And that will save the changes you've made without overwriting the previous project. And the reason why I do that is because as I'm working, I may make changes that I take something out, or I change some notes, or I do something to where I wish I could go back to a previous version, and this way I can. Just to give you an idea, if I go look at, well, actually, if we look at just my file menu here and I go to more, you could see that strapped to the max is at version 12. There's 11, there's 10, there's 9, 8, 7, 6, all the way down to the beginning. And rise above, same thing. You could see how I save multiple versions. Now, I find it's more useful later on in production than at the beginning, uh, because sometimes you're doing experimental things with the mix. Let's say you have a mix you like, and then you get some new plug-in and you want to try it out, and you put it in there and you make some changes and you go, oh, that sounds good. Rather than saving it over your previous version, you save it as a new version, so that when you go and listen to that mix in the car and you realize, oh, I screwed it up, you always have your previous version to go back to. So that's using Control N. Now it does take up a little bit of space, so you have to be aware of, do you have the space to manage it? You know, if you're running out of space, you have to be a little more uh, cautious with it. But otherwise, uh, I use it a lot. I think it would be useful for you to use it as well in the right circumstances. And those were my 6 quick tips on making your FL Studio experience and workflow a little more uh, efficient. And I hope you found some use in them. Um, Other than that, I hope you guys have a good one, and thank you for watching. On your way out, if you give me a like, if you give me a subscribe, I'll appreciate it. My content is not currently monetized, but it lets me know that I'm appreciated. Leave me a comment. I love reading positive comments, etc. And I hope you guys found something useful here. Have a good one.